Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Toughness Podcast, where we dive into the mindset of what it takes to get from where we're at to where we want to go in business, in our career, and literally every area of life. Of how we approach things with that confidence, with focus, with that emotional control, and energy that we need to perform our best. Now, of course, this is Matt Phillips, your host for this podcast. I'm also the founder of Pro Athlete Advantage, and I am so excited to be back with you today to introduce you to just a fabulous person, a fabulous guest, somebody that I'm just blessed to have spent a few minutes with and get to share this interview today with you. Now, I want to make sure that, as the last couple podcasts, we've actually been filming these via Zoom as well. So if you like to watch a video, you can go over to YouTube, you can go over to our Facebook page, Instagram, a couple other places, and make sure you check out the video as well. Obviously, you might be listening on the podcast right now, so you're just hearing my lovely voice, and soon you'll get to hear my guest voice as well. So today, let me please introduce you to Joe De Sena. Now, for those of you, some of you, that name will be very familiar. For others of you, you may not know Joe's name, but you will know Spartan, the obstacle, race, and endurance brand. Maybe some of you today listening have done a Spartan race in your life. Maybe some of you have thought about doing a Spartan race. And then there's going to be a population who would never want to do a Spartan race. I hope after this interview, everyone here will want to go join and do a Spartan race. Joe De Sena, like I said, is the founder and CEO of Spartan and has a fascinating background. This was so much fun sitting with him. Totally laid back interview. I actually got to meet some of his kids during the interview, one of his sons, one of his daughters, as they came up and interacted a little bit. I found out his son actually at age 7 ran the New York City Marathon, which is incredible in and of itself. I mean, what an absolute stud to be able to pull that off. So absolutely amazing. We dive into a lot of different items that I know is just going to really resonate with you. You're going to hear about his background, how he got started, how the Spartan World came up. You're going to hear about his Spartan X leadership forum that he runs for different business leaders to help them break through these mental and physical challenges. You're going to hear about, how he kind of positions himself as a leader within his company and how he's grown multiple companies. I mean, Joe has this entrepreneurial spirit that you're just going to get this great sense for. We talk about this concept of preparing for life, not just preparing for the next thing or the next race. And Joe shares some things, and I will share this with you, of 15 exercises that he does every single day focused on strength, mobility, flexibility. I'm going to share that in the show notes as well on my website, proathleteadvantage.com/podcast. That you can go check out and implement for yourself. It's something that I've now implemented in my life. And I will tell you, I need some work because Mr. Matt Phillips you're listening to right now is not the most flexible person in the world. So you can also take these exercises. Joe is nice enough to share that with all of us. So a little more about Joe, just so you have some context. He is an entrepreneur at heart. You're going to hear this. He actually built a multi-million-dollar pool and construction business in college. He created and sold a Wall Street trading firm. And he just had this passion ignited in him to start ripping people off their couches and live the Spartan lifestyle. He now lives in Vermont, operates an organic farm, bed and breakfast. And he just had this passion for ultra marathons and adventure races grow within him and knew he had to start Spartan. Now, get this. There are over 1 million annual global participants at more than 200 events across more than 30 countries. That's what Spartan does. I mean, they've got things for people of all ages. And as you're going to hear him talk, he really promotes getting your kids involved in the Spartan life and running a Spartan race, because the sense of accomplishment that they get from this, and along with getting fit, learning to challenge themselves in different ways. Joe is the a New York Times bestselling author. I mean, I can go on and on about this guy, right? He's a New York Times bestselling author of Spartan Up, of Spartan Fit. Recently released his third book, The Spartan Way, which we'll have links to that you can pick up and support him. He launched, as I mentioned, that Spartan X Leadership Forum, this collaborative events, a group of events, I should say, with different business leaders around the world. And he is just a phenomenal, you're going to be motivated by this guy. And you're going to love the comments. You're going to love his approach. And I just can't wait to introduce you to Joe. So without further ado, let me stop delaying. Let me get you introduced to the one and only Joe De Sena. Joe, fired up, excited to meet with you. I've read a ton about you. I'm very appreciative of my friend Ken connecting us and having this opportunity. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I apologize. I'm eating. I'll be done soon. And I'm going to tell my daughter, come here, Alex. Come here. Say hello.
Hello.
Hey, Alex. How are you?
Say hi. You have to go tell the boys to go to another place to make noise because I'm in the middle of doing this.
I love it. I've got my three kids sitting
How old
quietly in the other room. They're 13, 11, and 7. Two girls
you're right.
and a boy.
You're in the same zone as me. Yeah.
So how old are yours?
13, 11, 10, and 6.
Yep. We're right at it together. Well, so I've got a bunch of different questions to ask you. I mean, when I, think of Spartan, when I think of kind of what you do, when I have researched you, read about you, learned about you, I mean, you kind of scream mental toughness to me, right? Because my specialty, I run a company called Pro Athlete Advantage. I work with athletes and I work with business leaders all on mindset, on mental toughness. So it's starting to kind of climb in between the ears and figure out what's holding people back. So you're like, what you do screams mindset, screams mental toughness, right? So first question out of the gate for you is, how would you define someone who's mentally tough?
I think when we think of the words mental toughness, we think about something that's physically really challenging that person might tackle. And I don't know. I don't think that's the case, actually. I think mental toughness comes across all sizes and shapes. And so it's that person that just has no quit, right? That just pushes through when it looks really bleak. And there isn't light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's completely dark.
Yes.
And it's no longer fun. And there's people piling on that are saying, I told you so. And you're doubting yourself, but somehow you just don't give in and you push through. And that to me encapsulates mental toughness. The funny thing is we were talking about it today because we were on the ski slopes and the kids were skiing. And I said, the number one sport correlated to finishing our most grueling events, 60, 70-hour events. What do you think it is, if you had to guess? What sport would correlate to producing an individual that just eats up and spits out a 60 or 70-hour event?
Oh, probably the ultra world, I would guess.
Nobody guesses it, and it makes no sense, but downhill skiers. And
really?
Yeah, and the reason I suspect that's the case is today I watched the kids do a ski race. The ski races are about a minute long, but you're starting at 5 a.m. and you're putting on boots and you're heading out in the cold weather. And then you're standing there for hours and the wind is blowing and it's raining and you're about to go 60 miles an hour plus on ice. And these downhill skiers show up and they do our events and they literally they just dust it off their like, that's all you got?
So did you grow up skiing?
I did grow up skiing, but I grew up in skiing in jeans and not really knowing what I was doing. And when I think back to my childhood skiing, it was cold. My blue jeans were ice, literally turned to ice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would go into the dark if they had night skiing, and somehow you were frozen. But I loved it so much that you just grit and bear it and push through, and your feet were basically bleeding because the boots were so tight, right? And yeah, and so it's a sport that breeds mental toughness.
That's a great point. Yeah, I grew up in Colorado for the most part, and Utah for a little bit as well. And you have to get used to the cold and to deal with it. And it's definitely something that is a sport. It's not for the faint of heart, because if you don't like being cold, like my wife, she's not a big fan of skiing because she doesn't like being cold. So she'd rather be in the lounge, kind of having her drink or having her coffee and tea, reading a book, stuff like that. But it's a fascinating sport.
When I think back, let's go back like 300 or 400 years, 500 years, 1,000 years. And I think back to like a really warm climate 1,000 years ago versus like the Vikings. Mm-hmm. Like without any science and just from 50,000 feet, Vikings are pretty resilient. Like anybody in the north, yes. Pretty resilient bunch.
Yes.
Right? The heat sucks, but I don't know. It produces a different individual.
It does. No, I agree with you. I know you're a fan. You do a little cold exposure and cold showers and all these things to kind of test yourself. And, I as well, I'll do the cold showers. And the way I describe it, when you step into a cold shower, I don't know if you've experienced this, you're probably so used to it now, but when you step into a cold shower for the first time, especially, it's this mental battle going on just before you even take that first step in, because you know what's coming and you know what it's going to feel like. This mental battle. How often are you a daily kind of cold exposure guy, or how do you how does that kind of integrate in?
I don't know why. I grew up in a neighborhood that was all organized crime. And at a very young age, I found myself testing myself. I was taking cold showers like from 10 years old. And when I think back now and I look at my kids, what prompted me to do that? And I think what it was, all these people were going to jail or getting killed. And I think that was my way of just like, okay, was I tough enough to be here? And, could I not put the air conditioner on in the car? Could I jump in a cold shower? Could I carry rocks around the block? Those were my little personal tests to see, could I hang with these individuals, I think. And I do it religiously. My day, I have a routine. It's probably going on for 40 years. And so I wake up in the morning and I work out. I got to get my body being the car. And the example I have to start the car, and I got to sweat and I got to breathe heavy. I don't eat. I just don't like to eat before I work out. Mm-hmm. I don't eat for an hour or two after that workout, even though some nutritionists would say, you want to replace that glycogen right away. I just feel better if I don't eat. I take a cold shower, and then I'm ferociously hungry when I finally do eat.
Yeah. So what time do you wake up in the morning usually?
I'm up just before 5.
Okay. And how long do you work out?
At a minimum, I would say 90 minutes.
Minimum. Combination of cardio, weights?
I mean, it's changed throughout my life, but there were periods of time, and they're still coming, where I'll go out and do sprints. But by and large, 80% of the time is a body weight workout. And my mother used to teach yoga in the living room when I was young. I knew a bunch of chiropractors because that's what my mother believed in, holistic healing. And so I just picked up 21 movements that I just do religiously. And I am telling you, I nailed it. And I've picked up these movements around, some from my mom, some from Bikram yoga, some from Japan wrestling,
yes.
A Pilates teacher in New York, Conor McGregor, right? I got these 21 movements, and I do 50 reps, roughly 50. There's a couple I do 100, but 50 reps. And yesterday I decided, you know what? I'm going to carry a kettlebell to the top of the ski resort. And, but like, no issue, nothing, no soreness, nothing. Just carry the kettlebell to the, like, and it's really these bodyweight exercises. Like, friends will say, hey, let's go run 50 miles. I'll train for a few weeks, but the base of these particular exercises really has me ready for anything.
Really?
Yeah, and they're very focused on mobility and flexibility, because when somebody says to me, Joe, I can't go do an Ironman or I can't do a Spartan Race, I say, hang on a second. If God forbid we were in a car crash or a plane crash and we had to go 50 or 100 miles to safety, we would do it. The only thing that's going to stop us from doing it is an injury. So really what we're talking about here, getting you ready, is avoiding injury.
Sure.
Because if you want it bad enough, you're going to crawl. You know, you'll bite your way to the finish if you have to. But we just got to make sure you don't get injured.
Yes. Well, so that's fascinating, because
that makes sense.
No, it totally does. And I think, you know, especially it's like, you know, I'm done with, you know, kind of traditional sports. Baseball was my big one growing up, and was fortunate to play at a decently high level. And now I've kind of moved on, where it's been this combination of CrossFit and all these other, you know, modalities. I'm now training for my first ultra, like a 50K that's down south here in Colorado, which will be interesting. Talking about a mental and a kind of physical challenge, but we've been so focused on that.
What's the date on it?
It's May 4th.
We have a 50 we put on the East Coast. Let's exchange emails when this is over, and I'll try to get you there.
Oh, brilliant.
Try to convince you to come to the East Coast.
I love it.
For the hell of it, I'd love to give you my routine, and you should test it and see how you do in the 50.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love that. I think that'd be incredible. Yeah, I love the body weight stuff. I think it's awesome. So you work out for like a minimum of 90 minutes, and then take your cold shower, wait an hour or so, then eat afterwards. What's a typical kind of breakfast-ish for you?
Well, I'm going to preface everything by saying I eat too much.
Okay.
I've admitted it publicly right here with you. I just eat too much. The quantity, volume of food. I grew up in an Italian household, like I said, and they just pushed food on me, and I'm working on my relationship with food.
Are you?
And so this morning, I did some hiking again on the ski mountain, and then I went to, because I had them chopped up for the kids while they were racing, I went to carrots and apples and a green juice, and it kind of hasn't ended since 10 a.m. I've been eating nonstop. But it's never, I don't think anybody would look and say, oh, you eat, you know, crappy food. It's like I chose 2 baked potatoes over French fries that were being served at the lodge. So I had 2 baked potatoes with mustard, right? You're not going to argue with that too much unless you're on a keto diet, right? Like I've had, what else did I eat? I ate a bunch of cashews on the drive, 3.5-hour drive from the ski resort to our house. I ate cashews, but it just hasn't stopped. I haven't stopped eating.
That's funny, but
and I don't even gain weight. So like I don't think I could eat enough.
True.
If that makes to outdo my workout. Like I don't know.
Well, I think that's a huge point, because there's a quantity of food, but it's the quantity of the correct food to eat. So you didn't tell me that you're grabbing for a couple of donuts and, you know, ding dongs, you know, standing on the mountain. It's like carrots, and it's like this baked potato. Of course, you're on keto, great, but it's quality nuts, all that sort of stuff. So here's what I want to dig in, because I think when I talk about like food and eating the right things, I think you'd agree with this. Everybody knows they should work out, right? They know the benefits of it. Everybody knows that they should eat like the vegetables over the donut, right? But 90 8%, making up numbers here, of people don't do it, right? They give into that temptation. They just give in, right? They pick the bad thing or don't work out when they know they should. So a person like you talked about that you've got your morning routine. It's a religious thing for you. I mean, every morning it's the same thing. The fact that you grab cashews versus something else. Where does that kind of drive come from? What's going on like in your head as you're approaching things?
Let's go through this morning. So this morning was tricky because I had to get the kids on the slope very early. This morning was a screwed up morning. I had to run to the mountain. I started to do my body weight routine, but I had to get the kids up. I had to get ski boots on. And so now I found myself, and this is important for anybody listening who's challenged with staying on a routine. I found myself at the mountain, getting them out the door on the slope. The winds were howling. It was terrible snow, ice. Now I have my youngest one. My wife's in, she took a trip to the Galapagos Islands with my other daughter. So I got my 6-year-old. I have a friend of the boys. I've got my kids racing, and I have to get my workout in, right? Now, some people listening might say it's selfish. And all that's playing in my head is, I know that if I don't get my workout in, the rest of my day is going to suck. So my workout is somehow going to get incorporated here, somehow. So I send my youngest off with the friend and one of my sons, and some of the parents are like, oh my God, you're bold. And I go to see the one that's racing. Now, I say to myself, well, all the parents are going to start walking up the hill a little bit to see their kids race. Why don't I carry some weight and I'll just do it multiple times, right? Now, I know it looks weird to the 70, 100, whatever it is, 100 parents, let's call it, on the sideline, and they're holding their coffees and things. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way they wouldn't feel better if they just use the time. Like, you're standing there doing nothing. Your kid is only going to race for 40 seconds. You're going to wait an hour to see those 40 seconds. Why aren't you walking up and down the hill with me? Right? So I just do that everywhere. And people think I'm weird. I carry around a kettlebell because I travel a lot, right? And so my thinking is, if I got to carry the kettlebell from the house into a car, and then I got to get out of the car and go to the office, before you know it, you're going to clock a couple of miles anyway every day, even with the lack of movement people have. And so now I clock 2 miles with a kettlebell as opposed to just with nothing, right? Yes. And then I try to avoid elevators and escalators at all costs. So now I'm carrying the thing up the stairs, which is a nightmare. Yes. And I you said the question was like, how do you find that motivation? Like, where does that drive come from? And I would say it's really just integrity. It's this thing where I just said to myself and everybody around me, including you right now publicly, right? Yes. And I do it as often as I can. It's non-negotiable. The only bad workout you have is the one you don't do. Yes. The dopamine pathways open up. The drugs are released in your head. You're happier yourself. You're nicer to be around. Everything in your life is better. Rain, shine, does not matter. And so it's really up to you. It has nothing to do with. I mean, it's like brushing your teeth. I don't even understand the conversation, right? Like, you got to do it. Yep. People were screaming at me yesterday on the chairlift. What are you training for? Because they saw me with the kettlebell on my shoulder going up the mountain. And my response, without even thinking, was, I'm training for life. I don't understand I'm training for life.
See,
so
that's such a huge thing.
Sorry if I talk your ear off.
No, I mean, this is fabulous, right? Because this is the crux of everything, I believe. Again, we know all this stuff, right? But we somehow rely on, I don't know, some motivation, some video to pop up that's going to get us off the couch all of a sudden, right?
Let me interrupt you. 2 days ago, or maybe the day I was climbing the mountain, somebody sent me a text. Awesome. And let me look. And the text read something to the effect of, like, motivation and inspiration are for amateurs. Professionals just do the work. And I read that, And I think I started my hike up the mountain with the kettlebell. And it's like, you know, I have a podcast too. You have a podcast here. We write books. I write articles all about motivation, you know, Tony Robbins type stuff, gets up on stage and claps and cheers and dances. It's not like, stop. Make it non-negotiable. Just fucking do the work. Like, you know, like, you know. Yeah.
That's that true, right? And, you know, I've been, you know, before, there's certain periods where it's like this conversation going on in my head, right? The voice that tends to start speaking a bit louder than normal.
Yeah.
And it's that, you know, hey, being able to just tell it to shut up. I mean, at its core, right? It's like, shut up. Like, you're done. Like, I'm going, I'm doing this, or I'm picking this over that. Like, this is it. It's non-negotiable, to your point. This is the way it has to be.
There's a couple of tricks if people need a few tricks. One is, and I actually use it once in a while, and I've gotten it from some Olympians, which is tell yourself it's okay to quit this morning. So you really don't feel like doing it. You're about to hit the snooze button. Start the workout. And let's say you were going to do, I'm making it up. Let's say you're going to go run 5 miles. Say to yourself, you know what? Today I'm just going to run a half mile. I guarantee you 99% of the time you'll finish the 5 miles.
Yeah.
Half a mile turns into a mile, turns into 2 miles. Before you know it, you're 2.5 miles back away from the house. You got to come home anyway. You get the 5 miles.
Yep. I love that. I love that. Yeah. It's so many tricks we can play on ourselves, right? Which is, you know, our brain's built for comfort, right? To protect us and not get us out of our comfort zone. But
yeah,
that's what's special about like what you've done is like you found a way to push through that and kind of expose yourself to pain. You know, I don't think pain that, you know, is going to, for a long period of time, hurt you in a really, really bad way. But there's growth that comes from that.
I think about the trees on the side of a mountain versus the tree that grows in the greenhouse, right? The tree that grows on the side of the mountain, where the roots are wrapped around the rocks, and they withstand wind and rain. And like, I want to be that tree.
Yeah.
I want to be the tree in the greenhouse that gets blown over with a basic Saturday storm.
Yep. I love that. And so there's a couple of things. One that kind of stuck out to me is this. I mean, there's so many stories about you, and I want to get into kind of why you started Spartan in the first place, which you probably talk about all the time. But one thing that stuck out to me that's, you know, in your bio and all these stories about you is when you went to Wall Street, and you're kind of an entrepreneur from a young age, right? But at one point you went to Wall Street, and all of a sudden you looked and you're like 30 pounds overweight. And that was the spark to start this extreme training. So can you talk a little bit about like what happened then? Because I actually tell a story about like why I started this business. And it was when I was back in the corporate world, and all of a sudden I look, as you know, it happens overnight, of course, but I look in the mirror one day and I'm like, wow, I'm 30 pounds overweight. I hate my job. Like, I can't even stand going in the building every day. And now my marriage is at this weird brink of just going the complete wrong way because I'm taking it out on my wife. Right. And so that really resonated with when I heard that. So can you give a little context of like that Wall Street, I don't know, what happened there and what was that trigger for you?
Yeah, well, before Wall Street, like I was very lucky. My mother found yoga, health and wellness, like before there was a yoga journal or a Whole Foods. So I had that, even if it was just through osmosis, I had it oozing into me, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I was a young kid that wanted to make money. I saw my father go broke, and I wanted to make money. And Wall Street was elusive. It was exotic. It was like, man. And so when I landed that job there, everything else went on the back burner, and I was just trying to it was exciting and powerful and lucrative. And then I built a company, and I started hiring people. And so before you know it, days are going by, weeks are going by, months, years are snapping by, and we're making money. And it is just fast-paced action, like really intense. And I put a picture of a red barn next to my dad. I just would look at the red barn, and I just had to keep playing this tape in my head that not to get to a place where all of a sudden I'm 60 years old and I'm still sitting here, you know. And I wasn't feeling great. And I talked to my cousin, who was my mother's sister's son.
Okay.
And he like reinvigorated me, like relit all those sparks from my mother one day. Raw foods, you got to go do some Bikram yoga. And that was it, and then there were a series of things that occurred but by then I had made money. I'm not the kind of guy that I'm not chasing billions. That's not my thing. I just wanted enough money to take the pressure off having a family.
Yes.
And I felt good working out again. It felt great. I felt alive. And then I found out about these adventures and these challenges. And so like, sign me up. This is awesome. I feel like Indiana Jones. And so I ran around the world doing those. And then because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, then I said, I'm gonna get in business. I'm gonna do this myself. And so I started putting on events, and that's really rewarding, because then not only do you feel good, but you're making all these other people feel good. And my mother's stuff with the yoga, it was a bit crunchy and it was hard to swallow for most people to go into that lifestyle. They're not going to necessarily start meditating, although again, in the last few years, some of this stuff's becoming mainstream.
Yes.
But my version of it was out in the woods and carrying heavy things and going up and down mountains, right? That was my version of meditating and yoga. And
yes.
And it attracted a certain section of the population. And so now 275 events a year, 42 countries, and I don't know, 1.2 million people a year coming out. So I definitely have a free pass to heaven.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Impacting people. I love it. Did you ever see the Spartan World getting that big? Like saying that 275 races, like what did it start out for you? And I don't know, how'd you get here?
It was a disaster. It was, first race, we lost the guy for 9 days, ended up drifting to a deserted island. We found him with the Coast Guard, lost $500,000. Every race after that, I lost money. 10 years into it, I was down millions and millions of dollars. I don't even know what I was still doing, putting these races on, but I was really passionate about them.
Yeah.
And then in 2010, launched a new brand, Spartan, new concept, and it started to take hold. And I just went for broke. I don't know. I went nuts. And Reebok became a partner, and Reebok said, we need you in like 10 countries by, next month. And I was like, well, how the hell would I do that? And we did it. And then before you know it, we outpaced Reebok. They couldn't keep up with us. And once you start, and then I moved to Asia. I lived with the family in Tokyo and Singapore and Vancouver on the way back. We built out, 10 or 12 countries in Asia. And
That's incredible. So walk me through like the mindset you're going through, like that really tough time, losing millions of dollars, launch Spartan, and it starts to pick up steam. But like, what's the self-talk like going on in your head? Like, are you obviously you're a risk taker, right? You're willing to put yourself out there, but how did you kind of like wrap around like that the risk was still worth it even after those first those losses?
The problem with people like you and I and most of the people listening is we believe that if we're successful at something, we're going to use the same mindset and the same tools, and we're going to be successful again. I am done with the food. My daughter just asked me something. Hang on one second.
No worries.
Do you mind if Alex, can you ask IE please to make me a shake? I can't stop eating. I'm doing a Vega shake for those listening.
Oh, brilliant. Still going. I love it.
And because I know it's 6 o'clock and I really should be done right about now with my eating, so I just pack it all in. I'm working on my relationship. So so people like you and I, and so a lot of people, a lot of A personalities do this, but the reality is that that doesn't always work. And so something I was always fascinated with was, should you quit at things? And then when would you know the right time is to quit? Because there's lots of people that are in a relationship and they say, gee, I don't know if I want to be in this relationship. There's lots of people in the middle of a race that I call all these things journeys, right? And so whether it's a relationship or a business or a race, you're on these journeys, and are there times when you should make an about face during that journey? And so when you ask the question about Spartan, I think if we zoomed in on any moment along that journey, I absolutely should have quit. I was, and let me explain why. My values at that moment in my life were about building a family and having this awesome family life and the farm. Yep. And so if that was my true north, if that was my why, I had no business going for broke with Spartan. If I was 22 years old and my why was I want to make a fortune, well, then I should go for broke, right? So my values and my actions were not aligned. And so what was going through my head was, this is the way I've always done it before. I just don't quit. And so I'm just going to play that tape again. And I love, damn it, I can't think of his name. Mountain climber, U.S. Mountain climber, 14 peaks, no oxygen, and he says, and listen to this, anybody listening, getting to the top is optional, getting down is mandatory, right? So don't, now I would say, if you want to be the greatest mountain climber that ever lived, and you're setting a record, and you don't have a family, and the calendar is closing in, that if you don't get to the summit, you're going to miss this opportunity. You got to go for it.
Yep.
Win or lose, alive or dead, you got to go for it, right?
Yep.
If that's your thing. Yep. But if it's not, getting down is mandatory. I don't know if I answered the question well, but yeah, I was blinders on, head down, and completely irresponsible.
I love it. Would you change it?
I would not change it. Maybe what I would have done if I could do it all over again is I probably would have raised a bunch of money and taken the risk out of my own personal situation. Anybody with half a brain would have done that. But I went for broke myself. And I remember my bookkeeper walking into the office one day and saying, "What are you doing? What is this thing, Spartan?" We were burning through $350,000 a month. I mean, it was a straight shot to living in a tent.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd your wife react?
My wife sucks. She doesn't get involved in any of that. Like, she just, I think, assumes that I know what I'm doing, and that it'll be okay. So she's awesome. I'm really lucky there. Any other woman would have divorced me like 2 days into our marriage.
What's her background? Is she a risk taker by nature as well, or?
No, she's super easygoing, super nice, great family. She's a complete antithesis of me. Everything in her life is perfect. She was a soccer star, Final Four, captain of her team. She's just, everybody likes her. Not everybody likes me. She's complete opposite of me.
That's wild. Yeah, no, I think entrepreneurial journey, to your point, it takes a special couple to survive and thrive in that environment, especially in that startup stage before it hits. So yeah, that's wild. So a couple other questions. You have time for a couple more? Joe, you all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
And then I'll let you get back to your family and stuff and get you kind of your you time, if you will. The staying on business for a minute, what's kind of the biggest lesson that you've learned in growing a company to kind of the size it's at now?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. One is, in today's day and age, you better go into it prepared to organize and store and be able to access all the data. It's all about data. And I'm a dinosaur. I should use an abacus because I'm just behind the times on all that. So I would say if you're getting in business, you're like that data trumps everything. Because it's in this world, it's right at your fingertips. I mean, listen, Amazon, Facebook, Google, these are the biggest companies in the world, and they have completely wired our houses to hear and see and access every single thing we think and do and purchase, and so like follow their lead. They know what they're doing, right? So I would say that. I would say even if you raise a bunch of money, even if you're comfortable in your journey on a business, I would say you got to operate as if you're broke, because it forces you not to make mistakes. I can't tell you how many people I know that have raised $50 or $100 million and then blown it all because you're a drunken sailor. I've always been really close to the vest. It pisses some people off. They want higher salaries, whatever it is. But ultimately, being really, really tight forces you to make the right decisions. Hopefully, make the right decisions.
Yep.
And then the last thing I would say is make sure, and like you might have to go to a monastery for a month to nail this one, but make sure you love what you're about to do. Because if you don't love it, I mean, there's a great saying. Somebody said, a friend of mine, somebody said to him when he started a business, he sold to Hulu. They said, hey, just so you know, you're going to start your business, you're going to want to jump off a roof one day. And about 3 months into it, my friend called up his buddy and said, hey, I remember you saying I'd want to jump off a roof one day. You were wrong. I want to jump off a roof every day. So like, make sure you love what you're about to do, because it's gonna suck. And I know I'm smiling and I'm saying this is awesome, and but that's after 18 years. Mm-hmm. And I would say still 60% of my day sucks because I'm emailing and I'm doing the stuff I don't want to do. I want to go climb a mountain with a kettlebell. Yep. I want to hang out with people at races, but I'm responsible for the business.
Yes.
Right.
So true. It's so true. Yeah. We, especially the first couple of years of my business too, is this massive up and down, and you don't know, cash flow is good one month, awful the next, non-existent the next, I should say. But it's interesting, me looking back too, like I love what I do. And so it makes everything so much easier. But if I didn't have that love, I'd give up on it. I would have given up years ago. Give up.
Everybody would give up.
Yep.
I love Elon Musk. What did he say? He said, running a business is like looking into the abyss and chewing glass. And I would say he missed one component, which is your competitors are throwing like hatchets at you. Doing it's easy. Looking in the abyss, that's easy. Duck the hatchets.
Yeah. Learn to dodge, and that's why the functional fitness is so important, right?
Yeah.
you got to do the body weight stuff. That's so wild. No, it's so true. I think it's one of those things like be careful what you ask for. So starting a business sounds so sexy, and we look at the individuals and companies that have made it, whatever making it means, right? And we think it sounds so great to have all these freedoms and all this stuff, but it comes at a sacrifice. Everything comes at a sacrifice. And it's willing to kind of dig into that and just know that, understand it.
Really know it. Take a month and really think it through.
This is true. And then people like us just do it anyway. So that's wild. So, gosh, I want to hear about Spartan X too here in a second. But you travel so much, and this goes back to that earlier question of like everything has to be non-negotiable, stuff like that. When you travel, how do you ensure that like your nutrition stays where it needs to? even though I know you're eating all the
Listen,
time?
each day is comprised of a bunch of decisions. And so I just take it moment by moment, decision by decision. So I just entered the airport. I'm hungry. I'm probably going right to Hudson News, and I'm grabbing a bag of almonds. I really don't like almonds. I really don't like them. They're dry. But I figure if I knock out a bag of those, it'll get me to a place where I'm not like going for something that's not as healthy, right? So I knock out my bag of almonds. Now I'm making it closer to the gate. I'm still hungry.
Right.
And I pass a bunch of crappy places because airports are filled with crappy places. And if I could find it, like, I hope Howard Schultz is listening, but Starbucks sucks for me because I don't drink coffee and I just want something decent, something, right? And so they got the fruit cups. So I can go with a fruit cup. Pistachios will help me a bit because pistachios take so much time to open the damn shells that so
60 minutes later, yeah.
Yeah, so like now I'm in the middle of the desert last week, literally in the middle of the desert, and they've set up this giant, awesome Middle Eastern buffet of food, right? And they got pillows we're going to be sitting on. There's camels and falcons, no joke.
Wow.
And you can go off the rails here with the food because there's like 20 bowls of things. And so what I say is I'm going to have a giant salad first, just like with the almonds, right? Because I'm going to,
yes.
And so I'm just trying to just fill myself with, and I do it to my kids too. Like, oh, you want that thing that I don't want you to have? Eat this watermelon first. Get that watermelon, right?
Yep.
And then, I slip up, but my slip ups are not as severe. But if I slip up, I don't dwell on it. It's over. It's done. The past is completely irrelevant. I mean, when you think about it from a philosophical place, like 12 seconds ago is over. Like it's never coming back. It doesn't even matter, right? So that's the way I approach it.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's huge. I truly appreciate that perspective, right? When you hear that voice, that you can quiet it is the other key thing. So Spartan X Leadership Forum, can you tell me a little bit about that? I mean, obviously I've read about it, but for the listeners, what is it and why did you decide to start that leadership forum?
Well, I'm a businessman at heart. I'm an entrepreneur, right? And so I want to be around business people because I just feel comfortable around them. But my goal is to change 100 million lives, and that's a big, audacious, impossible goal. How do we do 100 million? Well, 100 million I'm not going to do in hand-to-hand combat one by one.
Correct.
But 100 million I could do if my buddy that runs Saks Fifth Avenue has 65,000 employees and we can get, right? So that's the goal is how do I get business people in a room, talk about the Spartan principles, which are 2,600 years old, and they work. Otherwise, they wouldn't be around for 2,600 years. And you could apply them to your leadership methodology. You could apply them to your team building techniques. You can apply them to your own life. And hopefully, they make their way through a company, and I change a bunch of lives. People don't have to do a race, but if they could sprinkle a little Spartan in their life,
yes,
I'm happy.
Yes. What's one of those items that I don't know is like core foundational, like one of the first things you talk about, like?
Well, we talked about it before, but the first one, you have to know your why.
Okay.
You have to know your true north. Mm-hmm. Very hard to do, and it changes throughout your life. I know it's changed for me.
Yes.
But if you're listening out, you gotta nail. Yours might have been baseball for a while. It's not baseball anymore, right?
Correct.
And you've got to lay that out, lay out your values, lay out your beliefs, make sure your actions are completely aligned with what you're doing. For a silly example, if your why is to be this amazing, healthy family man, but you're meeting your friends every Friday night and drinking until 2 a.m., and there's, everybody but your family's in that room. There's lots of women, and like your actions are not mirroring your values and beliefs. So it's a really important one. You got to nail that. And the Spartans, their why, they believed in their structure, this physical being, this body. They wanted to take care of this structure, and they believed if they took care of the structure, everything in life became easier. And so they surrounded themselves with people that did the same thing, and they put themselves in an environment that was conducive to doing that. And so I would say that's number one.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, the badass Spartans, man.
They're badass.
Come on.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So, all right. Last kind of question for you, and then I'll let you get back to your family and get some you time. You have all these people out there who are, a lot of my listeners are focused on, their entrepreneur mindset, right? So they've started businesses, they're rolling in it, as far as rolling in the business, they're starting to grow their teams. And it's almost this shift happening to that kind of more leadership, right? So kind of operation, like how do I lead this team? How do I kind of grow that team? What advice would you have for people who are kind of at that stage of like, now they're transitioning, if you will, to kind of that more leadership role? Like, how do they have a bigger leadership impact with their people?
Well, I think you got to lead from the front. I think you don't expect your team to do anything you're not doing. I think you got to eat last, right? Taking some cliches and words that you're seeing in all the leadership books out there, but I unfortunately, you're going to eat last. And I've been 40 years, I've been getting paid last. So
yes.
That's the way it works. And then, Theo Epstein, to stick along the baseball theme, Theo Epstein said something great to me. I said, how did you do it? How'd you do it twice? And he said, there's one thing that trumps everything else. And he goes, you got to get the team to take the blame, even though they didn't cause the problem, whatever that problem is, and pass the praise, even though it was them maybe that did the good thing. So when you get team members that are giving praise to others, even though they might have done the work, or taking the heat, even though they had nothing to do with it, he goes, then you got a team. And that team is much more powerful than an individual. So, yeah.
That's a great bit of advice. Well, so what's the best way for folks to connect with you? I know you've got the Spartan Way, Spartan Up books that I'll put links to and all that stuff in the show notes, and obviously the main website and stuff. But what's the best way to connect with you?
Just email me, joe@spartan.com, and joe@spartan.com if you need me. Please don't email me anything ridiculous. Make it important, because I get a lot of emails.
Yeah.
And then if you need any entries to races, or you want to do something crazy and you don't have the money, don't worry about it. I'm happy to help anybody. It doesn't matter.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if you have kids, if you're listening, you have kids, you must get your kid. You are doing your kid a disservice if the kid doesn't come out and do a Spartan race. And I know it sounds self-serving, but it's really, really important. And I say that because 99% of the kids are not on a podium in their sport that they play, and they're discouraged. But when a kid comes out and does a Spartan race, they just went to the Olympics. Doesn't matter what place they came in. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable to watch.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be getting my three little ones out there,
Yeah.
and let's definitely connect about that 50K out east. I'd love to. I'll shoot you an email and then get your routine and start implementing that for my May 4th race. And I'm just so appreciative of your time, Joe. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you later.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed the podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you could head over to iTunes or Stitcher and give us a rating or review. And as always, please don't forget to like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and stay in touch. Have a fabulous rest of your day.